Hello and welcome to the Road to the Garden podcast. It's Matt St. Jean, joined by my co-host Tommy Godin, as always, on our first Monday night in February that we're doing this. And yeah, this is only a couple weeks left in the season, Tommy.
Yeah, man, it's a calm before the storm. It definitely feels like a Monday in February, but we got a lot of exciting basketball coming up in these next couple weeks, and we're going to be more excited.
Yeah, and this is the road to the Garden right here. We're in the final few exits on the highway that leads to Madison Square Garden. Should be a hectic finish here. We're going to be getting into a whole bunch tonight. We've got 5 Big East teams in the AP Top 25 as of this morning. We're going to be talking about that, how the teams did this past weekend. We're going to talk a little about our power rankings. Look ahead to the week. We got our game of the week tomorrow night, Tommy. Tuesday night in Hartford. We're going to be previewing that one and the rest of the middle of the week action. And we're going to be answering some questions from all of you. Some people submitted some questions into our mailbag. We got some interesting ones we're going to be getting through. That's what we got on tap for tonight. A couple reminders before we get into this. First, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're not, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Road to the Garden. You'll see that code down there at the bottom of the screen. It does work. If you're looking to go to any Big East games or the Big East tournament, we urge you go do that. And then another reminder: this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site house-enterprise.com for more info. If you want to read our power rankings, our previews, our thoughts on the Big East, head over there. You're going to find it all. I think we're going to start here, Tommy, though, with not our own rankings of the Big East, but ones from the outside. That is the AP Top 25. We have 5 teams up there in the Big East. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that the conference got 5 teams up there?
I mean, it's great for the conference. The more ranked teams you have, obviously, the better. But it's good to be back. I know that. I mean, it feels like forever ago, but it was really almost a year to the day, February 7th, 2022, the last time the Big East had 5 teams that were ranked. So it's great for the conference, and all 5 teams are more than deserving to be ranked.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the 5 anybody would have picked at the beginning of the season to be ranked at this point, and that's what makes this whole thing so interesting in general, is the way it can change. One thing I thought was interesting: only one team of the 5 that's ranked. They had 5 ranked a year ago, 5 ranked today for the first time since then. 4 of the 5 teams are the same. The only one that got swapped out, Villanova, swapped out for Creighton. That's happened in 364 days. All that change to have really very little change at the top. But I think we should start at the top with number 10, Marquette, and we're gonna run down where these teams are and how they've done so far. But I think we need to give Marquette some flowers here for getting into the top 10. This team, I think I've been clamoring for them to be ranked higher for a while now, so this is vindication to see them be finally all the way up there. Do you agree that they're a top 10 team?
I mean, in the preseason, they were barely a top 10 team in the conference, coming in at number 9. Now they're a solidified top 10 team in the country. And just like what you said, I mean, they could obviously be higher than that by the end of the season, and they deserve to be. They're taking care of business. They're defending their home floor. Their offense is arguably the best offense in the country. Their defense is stout. They just have a whole bunch of guys that know their job. They do their role, and I mean, Marquette's such a fun team to watch. They're well balanced. They have a good coach in Shaka Smart, and I hope he can continue his success he's having into the postseason.
Yeah, and this is one thing I thought was interesting. Jeff Goodman had a piece today where he talked to a whole bunch of basketball media people, experts, and asked what their kind of or their top 25 players in college basketball at this point would be. So your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth teams nationally. And who the top player in the Big East was, according to that? Tyler Kolek. He was the first player on the 4th team in the country, which I think it's kind of crazy to not get anybody on the top 3 teams, but I digress. The Tyler Kolek gets up there. He's been fantastic this season, and I think it's kind of funny to see Marquette move up to 10. And we're talking about the offense. This is the worst week the offense has had all season, and this is when they finally get up there. They really didn't score well this past week. It didn't matter. They got 2 wins. They did drop from 1st to 4th in offensive efficiency, but you're splitting hairs by the time you get to that point.
Yeah, still top 5. I'm not, the panic button is well seated on the table here. It's not even on the table. It's in the trash can right now. But no, Marquette's 2-0 this week, 2 solid wins. That pesky Villanova team that's hungry for a signature win, and they did what they had to do against Butler in a game that never really felt too close. So
it was one of those. It got close at points, and it still didn't feel that close. Like, it was down to 2 possessions, and Stevie Mitchell, I know our own Ryan Cassidy tweeted out a video of Stevie Mitchell's defense on one of those late sequences, and he got like 2 or 3 deflections or knocked the ball away a couple times in there. Got a shot contest on the shot from Butler, and just all over the floor. So winning basketball from Marquette right now for sure.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And another team that's in the top 15 in the country, Xavier. I mean, we talk about good offenses. Good Lord, this Xavier team is – I mean, they weren't as good as they were 2-3 weeks ago, but their offense is still so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and what they did to St. John's, like, I get St. John's without David Jones there, and they couldn't travel with all the plane issues they were having. Like, they barely got into they barely got to Cincinnati for that game. And I kind of felt like they shouldn't have bothered making the trip the way that game went. It took all of 4 minutes for Xavier to gain control of that easily, and they never lost it. Xavier was clearly the best team on the floor, as they have been for most of the games they've played.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only bright spot for St. John's right now is AJ Storr.
Outside of Joel Soriano, who has become kind of such a constant that.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a double machine. I feel bad for him, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, the consistency of Joel Soriano mixed with the outburst that has been AJ Storr has been really the only bright spots for the St. John's team. And I mean, just what a well-balanced attack Xavier has. Looking through the box score here, Nunji with 21, Colby Jones 19, Sule Boom, who another one of those guys has a chance to be the Big East Player of the Year. 17 points, 3 of 6 shooting from deep. I mean, their attack on offense is so well balanced. I think them being at 13 and Marquette being at 10 is so perfect, because I think Marquette's defense is that much better to give them that top 10 edge over Xavier. But man, I mean, splitting hairs on offense, these are 2 extremely talented teams.
Yeah, and this is Xavier team again, doing this without Zach Fremantle. You really wouldn't even have noticed it the way the team looked. They're just, the starters were still that good. Jerome Hunter, I think, has come on strong as a nice depth piece for them, and he's fulfilling the role that they're asking for from him. And Sean Miller doing such a good job out in Cincinnati in his first year out there. I had some question marks about this team coming into the season, and they have answered every single one of them. You mentioned Sule Boom, that list that Jeff Goodman compiled. He was 18, so also on the 4th team, just 2 spots behind Tyler Kolek. I'd love to see the 2 of them play together. That would be unbelievable to watch the 2 of them on offense.
That'd be unstoppable.
Yeah, that'd be brutal for any opponent to go against. But yeah, this is a Xavier team well deserving of its spot in the AP poll here. With they also had the win against Providence since then, and that was, I think, a huge win for where they are. And they just keep chalking up wins. That loss to DePaul that they had, the further and further away we get from it, the more I think that was just kind of an accident.
DePaul lucked into a win. They didn't mean to.
DePaul has not won since that game.
Yeah, and they beat Villanova the same week.
Yeah, they won 2 out of 3 against Villanova, and Xavier have not won since.
And then they lost to Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
That's DePaul for you in a nutshell.
Yeah.
We love DePaul basketball on the pod, though.
Oh yeah.
But I think it was you who texted me this. It was Jerome Hunter, the emergence of him. You compared it to Frederick King from Creighton when Ryan Kalkbrenner went down.
Mhm.
The emergence of Frederick King, like you didn't know what you had because Kalkbrenner would have played all of those minutes. And I mean, when Kalkbrenner went down, Frederick King, his first game was rough, but he stepped into that role. And I think that's Jerome Hunter now
Yeah.
with
That was
freedom
that
play.
was actually that was absolutely not me that texted you that.
That was not
Uh,
you?
that
It's
was
probably
not me.
DeRosa.
See, you know what? You know what my comparison here for Jerome Hunter is? And this is going to sound a little bit weird because it's a very different player in a very different role. I'm going with last year's Jared Bynum for the Friars. The way he played a sixth man off the bench and was able to create a spark for them. And when Al Durham was banged up, he was able. The Friars basically had 6 starters because of what he could give you for offense off the bench. I look at Xavier this year. Jerome Hunter can kind of give you the same thing, just on defense. It's a different role, but he is a 6th starter caliber player who can give them really quality minutes and who can give them a different dimension they don't have with the starting 5. And I think that's important. I mean, they got 2 looks when Zach Freemantel's healthy. They got 2 looks that can kill you. 2 groups of 5 players out there, and you need to have that. They needed that depth. They got two starting lineups that they could run out there and feel pretty good about. So I feel very good as a Xavier fan at this moment.
Yeah, couldn't feel much better.
Yeah. We go down number 20 in the AP poll is Providence. They haven't done anything since the last time that we talked. They've been steady there. They got the weekend off, which I think they needed, given how banged up they were after that game at Xavier. Jared Bynum, I know today, was talking to the press. He's feeling better, getting fully back to practice after his injury. And the Friars fell 3 spots. The 3 teams that jumped them, there's St. Mary's, who beat Gonzaga. Miami was a head-to-head win over Providence and got 2 ACC wins last week. And Indiana. Indiana jumped them. Indiana beat number 1 Purdue. So all teams that I think are fair to jump Providence, they stay in the top 20. And another good year for Ed Cooley.
I mean, Ed Cooley is incredible. I would love to go to dinner and just pick his brain about everything, like the transfer portal, the progression of these guys. I mean, PC is Portal College now, and Ed Cooley is the conductor of that train. It's just so impressive. I mean, it feels like this isn't the case, but it feels like you just took last year's team that won the Big East regular season tournament, went to the Sweet 16, lost it, and then brought a brand new team in who could do the exact same thing. And there's a handful of coaches in the country that could do that,
Yeah.
and Ed Cooley is right in the middle of that handful.
And usually the guys who are doing that are the guys who bring in the one and done recruits and are losing them because they're all going to the NBA. So doing this with guys who aren't that caliber, except for Bryce Hopkins, none of these other guys are that caliber of recruit. So Ed Cooley doing this in back-to-back years, incredibly impressive. And he's making that Coach of the Year award he got last year. It's looking less like a fluke and more like he's just that good of a coach and of a program builder. So Friars there at 20, right there behind them on the rear view mirror, it's going to be UConn. UConn, pair of wins last week. They beat DePaul. They get a win over Georgetown in a game that was kind of close. What's your feeling on UConn at this point?
I don't feel good if I'm a UConn fan, to be completely honest with you. I mean, you look at their schedule, and I mean, yeah, they had 2 wins this week over Georgetown and DePaul, the punching bags of the conference. They lost at Xavier. Well, they lost at home to Xavier. They beat Butler, but everybody beats Butler except for Nova, I guess. And then the last 2 games before that were losses to St. John's, which wasn't even a close loss either. It was a 9-point loss, and to Seton Hall. I mean, this UConn team has been sputtering a little bit, and they've kind of held on to their spot in the top 25 because their first half of the season was just that good. They were that team. But yeah, UConn is a team I still see on the decline a little bit. What are your thoughts?
See, I'm kind of going the opposite direction here. I thought they looked a lot better in the win over DePaul. Not perfect, but one of the better UConn performances we'd seen in a little bit. And I know they played Georgetown close, which is a little bit concerning. But Georgetown has played a lot of teams close. Playing teams close has not been the issue for Georgetown. It's been finishing.
Yeah.
And I think we saw Georgetown made a run, and UConn answered really well. How many close – every time UConn's been in a close game, they haven't been able to pull it out, especially on offense. They haven't had guys who could hit the shots. Caravan hit 2 shots late in that game to seal it. Hit a couple threes there, which was huge. And I thought Andre Jackson had maybe his best game in the conference play. He held Primo Spears scoreless. The second leading scorer in the Big East. He shut him out and didn't force anything on offense. So still room to grow for UConn. But I think this was the closest we've seen them play to consistent, like, winning basketball, guys knowing their role, guys being in the right spots in the road against a team that gave them a good fight. Obviously, we're going to be talking about it later. They're in the game of the week hosting Marquette. I think that's going to tell us exactly where UConn is at this point and if they've made adjustments. But I feel like the Huskies have made some good adjustments and learned from the issues they had earlier in the season.
Yeah, they certainly aren't as good as they once were, but they're also not as bad as they once were recently. I mean, losing by 9 to St. John's is never good, but like you just touched on a little bit, they're being thrown into the gauntlet over these next 4 games. They got Marquette tomorrow, Creighton on Saturday, who's victors of 6 straight. We'll get to them in just a second. They got a tenacious Seton Hall team coming into their home arena. I don't know where they're playing, at the XL or wherever, but
I believe that's at the XL Center.
Perfect. And then they have Providence. So they're really getting thrown into the gauntlet here. We're going to see what UConn's made of. And if they can, honestly.
It's a gamble. Seton Hall game's a gamble.
Ooh, even better, honestly. But going 2-2 here isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, when I played golf, my swing coach always told me there's no pictures on a scorecard. If you get a win, you get a win. If you get a 4, you get a 4. For UConn, there is now. I mean, I would, if they're going to win one of these games, I want to see a convincing win. Most likely they're going to get that against Seton Hall. But if they can pick up a convincing win at home against either Marquette or Providence, that'll go a long way for them the rest of the year. Yeah.
But I think just defending their own building is kind of the name of the game from here on out. I don't mind the losses at Xavier, Providence, at Marquette, even at Seton Hall. You lose by 1 point at the very end of a game to a tough team there on the road. It happens sometimes. Losing at home to St. John's and Xavier, that's tough. You can't have the close road losses and home losses against teams that you're supposed to be better than. So this is where they got to start picking it up down the stretch. I've been impressed with what we saw the last 2 games. I mean, this is better play from UConn. We'll see if it translates this week. They're still in the rankings. I imagine they're going to have to earn that ranking here this week. Otherwise, they're going to fall out.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
And the last team ranked here in the Big East, number 23, Creighton. Blue Jays back in it. 6-game winning streak. It's the 6-game streaks for this team. They start with 6 wins, 6 losses in a row. They got a 6-game winning streak going here to get back into the rankings. And depending on what computers you look at, some teams say Creighton has actually been the best team in the Big East here in conference play.
I'm looking at those computers. I don't think I could be higher on Creighton. I think I picked them number 2 in this week's power rankings just because Marquette hasn't done anything to fall out of that top spot. But as soon as they slip, Creighton's going in to that top spot. And that February 21st game between these 2 teams is going to be really, really good.
Yeah. Yes, it will be. And honestly, I really enjoy watching Creighton play basketball at this point. They're a fun group to watch. It's just enjoyable. Trey Alexander, one of our players of the week there, excellent against Villanova. It was practically the entire Creighton offense. It felt like he hit 5 threes, so big stuff there. What did you take away from the Villanova-Creighton game Saturday night?
From a Creighton perspective, I took away it's any given night for any of their guys. I mean, they rely heavily on the Baylor Shireman's, Andrew Nemhard's, and of course the Kalkbrenner, who shoots probably like 99% from the field or whatever. But the other night it was Trey Alexander who basically carried their offense. But from my personal experience, my field of expertise, the Villanova side of things, I came out of that game. Of course, I would have loved the win, right? But Jay Wright going into the CHI Health Center Omaha with good teams in years past has gotten the doors blown off of him. This is a very good Creighton team. They were on a 5-game streak going into it. They had a lot of rest going into that game. I mean, a lot of Villanova was 10-point underdogs going into that game, and they were winning with 30 seconds left. So, I mean, coming out of that game, of course, we would have liked to win. It's the tail of the season. You've been saying it for a couple weeks now. It's just too little, too late for Villanova and these moral victories. But I mean, I came out of that game feeling better about us making a run in the tournament, in the Big East tournament, than I did before.
It feels like Villanova is right there, and they're still down Jordan Longino playing these. I mean, they just played Providence, Marquette, and Creighton, all the single digits, 3 games in a row, 2 of those games on the road. It's just, too little, too late. I think Villanova's a good team at this point, but the resume is just not going to be there, and it's all going to come down to 4 games at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I love that you brought up 2 things there. One is Jordan Longino, who's arguably, I mean, Jay Wright called him the best defender on the team. With having him not with us, even with that depth off the bench, is insanely massive. I mean, Villanova's given us no hope. They've given us 0 in terms of expectations for the rest of the year. But 0 is also the number of games they played with a completely healthy roster this season. So, I mean, it's been turmoil on the main line and Villanova Twitter and everything like that. The fan base is going crazy. There's a bunch of idiots with the Fire Neptune nonsense. That's what it is. It's nonsense. I'm calling
it's too early for that.
Yeah.
It's he's made some mistakes, I guess. Like things have not been perfect. This is his first year as a head coach at Villanova. Was his second year as a head coach, period, in college basketball.
Yeah.
It can take a little time. He hasn't had the group he wants. Like, you need to give Neptune at least 2 full years before you say anything. And he hasn't even really gotten to pick his roster yet. These are all guys from the last regime. Like, he has yet to really make his mark on this program. You really can't, unless this isn't Louisville coming out and being one of the worst teams in all of college basketball with a new coach. No, Villanova is competitive. They lost a couple of games they shouldn't have, and they've been banged up.
They haven't gotten blown out by anybody. The last time I checked, they only lost 1 game by double digits, and it was to Portland.
That game. Did you see what Portland did this weekend?
Oh my God, against Pepperdine?
Yeah.
Oh, TikTok about it. That was
unbelievable.
Insanity.
If you guys haven't seen that, Portland played a game against Pepperdine, and they were down by 3 late. The guy got fouled on the 3, I believe is what happened. Or 2, or they were down by 2 late, and the guy got fouled on the 2, whatever it was. Guy goes to the free throw line with a chance to tie the game. Misses one of the free throws. The other team gets the rebound. They foul just because there's like 0.6 seconds on the clock. They want to keep something alive. Guy who gets fouled throws an elbow, and there's a flagrant on it. So the other team shoots free throws. They miss 1, and then Portland gets the ball. They get to shoot free throws. They miss 1. So it's still a 1-point game. Yeah, it was a 1-point game at that point. And it's a technical, so they get the ball out of it, and they inbound, and it's a catch and shoot in the paint with a big man. It goes in, and Portland wins.
That was the craziest ending I've seen in quite some time. There were a lot of like mid-major highlights. Did you see the IUPUI dunk over that dude on Green Bay?
I thought you were going to mention the SIUE or SIEU, whatever it is, buzzer beater, three-quarter court buzzer beater.
Shout out to our friends at Mid-Major Madness. They've had a hell of a week.
I love that account. If you don't follow Mid-Major Madness, you should. They give you everything you need to know about the rest of college basketball. Fantastic stuff. Awesome. On your Villanova double-digit losses point, they have 2. One was to Portland. The other one was to DePaul. It was a 10-point loss to DePaul.
Oh, yeah, that leaked out at the end.
Yeah. So they have a 12-point loss to Portland, a 10-point loss to DePaul. Everything else has been single digits. They're close. They're competitive. They're 70 on KenPom. Like, that's usually a team that's 70 on KenPom at this point still has a chance to make a run. It's just they're 10-13, 4-8 in the conference. Not enough. Unless they run the table, there's probably not enough opportunities here to get Villanova a credible enough resume. So it's going to come down what happens at the Garden.
Yeah. I mean, the last 5 games of the season are a gauntlet, but I know their next 3 are extremely winnable games. I got DePaul Wednesday, Seton Hall Saturday, and then Butler
Well,
early next week. All at
Valentine's Day, yeah. I'll be
all at
favored
home.
in all three of those.
Yeah.
And then there's the gauntlet of the last 5. They found a way to get 8 wins down the stretch here. You never know, but they'd be 18 and 13 with a whole bunch of quad 1 wins at the end there. But yeah, I think Villanova has to start with beating one quality opponent here, and then we move forward from there.
Yeah.
There was one team in the Big East, or 2 teams in the Big East that aren't ranked that played on Sunday that we should mention here, and this is the Seton Hall DePaul game. What in the world was this game? I am just Seton Hall goes down 15-2 in this one. It took Seton Hall 90 minutes and 21 seconds to make a field goal against DePaul, and they end up winning.
I'm very happy I spent my Saturday doing something else besides watching this game. I saved myself. It was a good mental health day. I checked the score when I was driving around, and it was 16-1, 16 to. I think it was 16-2, but all of their points came on one-on-one free throws, right?
Yeah, 15-2. Yeah, and there were Seton Hall had made 2 free throws. Each of them were single ones because they missed the other.
Oh my god!
Yeah. So Seton Hall gets a 69-64 win. 2 wins last week when trailing by 13 points and coming back against St. John's and DePaul. They've won 7 of 8. Their only loss in that span was a 21-point home loss to Marquette. I have no idea if Seton Hall was good or not. Zero clue at this point. But they are 8-5 in the Big East, and they got a big game coming up on Wednesday against Creighton. That's a must-win.
Yeah, I mean, here we are, February 6th, and the jury's still out on Seton Hall.
Yep.
Like, I feel like every other team we've figured out for the most part. Seton Hall could honestly beat Marquette and then lose to Georgetown. I have no idea what's going on with this team.
Yeah, it's a bizarre team, but they're still in the tournament hunt here. They can earn it this week. They got 2 big games against Creighton and Villanova. We're going to talk about those games in a little bit. I do want to talk about, we had our power rankings. We haven't gone over our power rankings of the Big East on the show too much, but I do want to talk about it this week because I feel like we're in agreement. We know the middle 3, right? The middle 3, it's going to be UConn at 5, Seton Hall at 6, Villanova at 7. Is that how you've been doing it?
Yeah, I had Villanova at 6, Seton Hall at 7, but I am openly biased. So
okay, so we have the 3 tiers here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the bottom of the Big East for a second here because these 4 teams, I think there's a lot of different ways you can rank them. I want to hear how you had it this week.
Let me check. I don't know if I have the exact. I mean, I sent it to you. I had it muscle memory. DePaul 10, Georgetown 11. I wish I could go back and take that back. Now, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I have a little game for you, Matt, and for our listener. Now, you ever see like the blind resume things on Twitter? Team A, Team B.
Love the blind resumes.
Okay, I have a blind resume for you here. Team A and Team B. Team A's opposing points per game. The amount of points they let up in their last 5 games, 75.4. Team B has let up 83.2. Their Bart Torvik game score, 50 is average, 100 is perfect, 0 is 0.
Bad.
Bad, yeah. I don't think anyone's ever got 0. But Team A, 64.6. Team B, 44.8. Ken Palm offensive efficiency. Team A, 102.5. Team B, 94.5. And both are 1-4 in their last 4 games. Those were a lot of numbers I just threw at you.
It sounds a lot like Team A has been playing better than Team B.
Team A has most certainly been playing better than Team B. Team A is Georgetown. Team B is St. John's.
In that span, St. John's has a win over Georgetown.
That's their one. They're 1-4. Team B beat Team A. With those metrics, I mean, I hate to get into analytics and looking at the computers. I mean, it's well noted you and I don't watch basketball games. We just sit behind a computer all day. But, I mean, this is insane what's going on with St. John's. I think you had Georgetown as high as 8, and I could make an argument for that. At first, it's like a head-scratcher. But then you watch the teams play, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so if you watch, and when we do power rankings, it's not standings, it's not computers, it's basically how well are these teams playing right now.
Exactly.
And so, first of all, the bottom 4 teams, Georgetown, St. John's, Butler, DePaul, have not done a lot of winning right now. So we're judging based on how they've done in their losses. Georgetown has a couple of really competitive losses in there, and their one win this year came somewhat recently. DePaul has lost, I think, 5 in a row now, and has looked good at parts of some of those, but really not that great. St. John's has rarely looked good in this stretch. They were really bad at the end of that Villanova game when they had a chance to win. Could not close out Seton Hall. Andre Curbelo gets ejected. This team it took in a late AJ Store 3 for them to beat Georgetown. Otherwise, they would be 0-5, and Georgetown would have gotten 2 wins last week. And Butler may be legitimately the worst team in the conference right now. The way that they have played, they're rarely keeping games competitive. Their game against Marquette on Saturday, the fact that was close at all and score was a shock, but it wasn't a shock that when it got close, they weren't going to make the plays. Like this team is not good. And put it all together, Georgetown seems more dangerous than the other 3 to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, Butler basketball gets hard to watch sometimes. I know that you mentioned that in your article, but Butler basketball gets hard to watch. And them and not Seton Hall, I'm sorry, St. John's, I feel like if they played right now, I don't know which team would show up. I feel like they're in the same boat. They kind of lost the let me take that back because I don't want to say Butler's lost their coach. I don't think Mike Anderson has control over anything that's going on in that team right now. But both of these teams just look so dejected, and I don't know which one would show up if they played each other.
Yeah. So if you go to barttorvik.com, which fun fact, you can sort on Bart Torvik, and you can do all kinds of fun stuff you can't do on KenPom if you want to go through the metrics. If this is just efficiency rating for just conference games, Georgetown 158th in the country, Butler 237th. How Georgetown has 3 Big East wins right now, or Butler has 3 Big East wins right now, I have zero idea, because this team plays some really, really bad basketball at points, which is frustrating because I had much higher. I thought the roster construction looked good, and I was excited for Thad Matta. I'm shocked that it has gone as poorly as it has, but they are clearly the worst team in the Big East to me at this point.
Yeah, I mean, one of our writers had them as high as 5 in their preseason power rankings.
That was me.
I know.
I liked this team a lot coming out, and it has not worked. They have been far too inconsistent at scoring. The offense doesn't know what it's doing, and they've been banged up, which I think is part of it. But they've gotten worse as the season has gone along, and that is really inexcusable. So yeah, that's the bottom. How did you have the top 4 in the Big East?
I had Creighton, Marquette, Xavier, Providence.
I think that's fair. I went Xavier, Creighton, Marquette, Providence, I think. I have to pull mine up again to remember it.
I love that you brought it back home, that these aren't standings. These aren't what we think is going to be the standings at the end of the year. This is just how these teams are playing right now. And I don't think any team in the conference is playing as well as Creighton is right now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I wanted to put Creighton in first. I'm just not ready with the resume yet to justify it. And I feel bad putting Marquette third, because I think Marquette is one of the 10 best teams in the country, and they deserve their AP ranking. I just think Xavier is playing very good basketball right now while injured, and playing better basketball than Marquette is, at least the past week. You can talk all 4 of these teams. It's a toss-up. And Providence is kind of by default going 4th here because they just lost to Xavier and they haven't played in a bit. And they were without Jared Bynum, so they looked a little bit worse. The Friars could come away from this week with a couple of wins, and some other stuff goes on, and they're right back into the top 3. And you can really put the top 4 in any order, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to look ahead here?
Yeah, let's look ahead real quick.
All right. We're going to go through the games this week, preview them. We're going to do this kind of quickly, I think, except for a game of the week. It's a lot of games this week. And then we're going to go through, we're going to hit the mailbag. So let's start with this. we go chronological order. Our game of the week is going to be first 6:30 Eastern time up at the Excel Center. Marquette visiting UConn. This one's going to be on Fox Sports 1. How do you see this one playing out?
No, I saw that you picked UConn in this one on the Big
Mm-hmm.
East. Yeah, uh, I picked Marquette. I really like this Marquette team. I want to see UConn do it first. I want to see
Mm-hmm.
you. I mean, they went 2-0 last week again, Georgetown and DePaul, but they were two solid wins, so I can't really take that away from them. I want to see them compete or beat one of these top teams in the Big East before I feel confident picking them over a top 10 team in the country.
Yeah, that's fair. I think this is one of those games where it's not really about. It's not like this isn't like a big strategy game to me or anything crazy. These teams know each other. This is about the way you execute what you're supposed to do. Because UConn is more than capable of beating Marquette, and they're at home. I think they're going to be favored in this one. I don't have a line in front of me, but the guys actually need to go out there and make the plays for it to happen. And that's been the issue for UConn. And they've come close, but they got swept by Xavier. They cannot afford to get swept by Marquette, period. If they get swept here, that's going to be really rough for their seeding, I think. And then you're at a point where you need to beat Creighton, you need to beat Providence, you need to beat Seton Hall. It's like some of those games are ones that you need to get because you lost this one. And I think this is going to be one where UConn kind of wants it more. It'll be a close game, but I'm taking the home team.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with any outcome in this game. Andre Jackson, you mentioned it earlier, but what he did to Primo Spears defensively, that was incredible. And I just pulled up a line for you here, and it's very similar on Ken Palm. Actually, it's almost the exact same on Ken Palm as it is FanDuel. Ken Palm has it as a 4-point win for UConn, and FanDuel has it as a 3.5-point line, which I think is fair. But I like the underdog here. This is going to be such a fun game to watch. Like you said, not really too much strategy going on. These teams know each other. It's going to be who wants it more, and it's going to be high paced. It's a great offense versus a very good defense. But until Marquette shows me something otherwise, and UConn as well, I'm going to pick the Golden Eagles.
This is a game UConn's defense, I think, needs to win. And they had 16 turnovers in the first meeting, too. So I think UConn needs to control the pace, control the basketball. Don't just play your game and don't let Marquette dictate what's going to happen. That's what Xavier did, too. Xavier came in, played up-tempo, shot the lights out of the building early, and UConn never really was able to make the plays they needed to win the game after that. And I like the fight UConn showed in the second half of that game, though. I thought they adjusted well to the Xavier offense. So we'll see if they can take those same lessons here against an offense that's rated almost exactly the same.
Yeah. And where is this game being played?
At the Excel Center.
It's at the Excel Center. See, I wish that this was a Saturday game at the Excel Center and not a Tuesday game. But
yeah, it is what it is there. That's the early window on Fox Sports 1 on Tuesday. The late window, we're heading out to Indianapolis, heading out to Hinkle. St. John's at Butler. These are the teams that I think they were 10th and 11th in my power rankings because of the way that they have played recently. This is quite a game.
Yeah, quite a game is a way to put it. When I got that DM to submit my picks on Twitter for who we're going to pick in that
Big
Twitter
East Buckets.
Yeah, Big East Buckets. Shout out to them. Great account. For my Butler one, I put Butler, I guess, because I feel like can I pick any other teams besides these two? I mean, this is going to be such bad basketball. And
not a very appealing game. St. John's just does so poorly away from home. Like I gotta pick Butler.
I would have picked St. John's if the game was at Carnesecca, but
yeah, I think that this is one where I think both of these teams are much, much better at home. So I would take the home team in each end of this, home and home. So I think we're both taking Butler in the late one. That's the Tuesday slate. We'll move on to Wednesday, and I think it's funny in both Tuesday, Wednesday night. I think the best game is the early one.
Yep.
It's the 6:30 tip, Fox Sports 1, Creighton at Seton Hall. This is a must-win, I think, for Seton Hall if they want to get into the tournament. Not a must win, but if you lose this one, you're backed into a corner and you basically got to win out or nearly win out. This is a quad one opportunity you can't afford to waste. On the Creighton side of things, they're still very much alive in the race to win the Big East in the regular season based on the losses they have. They still don't have any bad losses. They only have 3 of them. But you can't get tripped up here. We saw Marquette go to Seton Hall. They blew them out. UConn goes to Seton Hall, loses. Providence goes to Seton Hall. They got to win. So I think Creighton needs to get this win to stay up in that top tier.
And I think they do. I mean, they won't if they shoot like they did against Villanova, excluding Trey Alexander, of course. But, yeah, I mean, this Seton Hall team is very stingy on defense. They're at home. They're going to be fired up bringing this Creighton team into town, but I think Creighton's just too good to drop this one. But again, another one of these games, nothing would surprise me because of this Seton Hall team. It's just you never know what you're going to get. Seton Hall team like a box of chocolates. That should be a Roth Stevenson.
So I look at these are the 2 best defenses in the Big East right now, and that's why I'm really intrigued about this one because I think it should be a low-scoring defensive battle. But Creighton's offense is much better than Seton Hall's. And the last time a good team came to play, like what Marquette did to Seton Hall, gives me pause about that whole thing. Seton Hall has 3 quad 1 wins by a combined 4 points. That's like when they beat good teams, it's ridiculously close. They beat Rutgers by 2, beat Memphis on a buzzer beater by 1. They beat UConn on a bucket at the very end by 1. Those are their quad 1 wins. This would have to be another quad 1. If Seton Hall pulls it out, I think it's going to be another really, really close one. I think Creighton has better dudes here. And it'll be close, but I think the Blue Jays pull it out.
Yeah, we're in complete agreement.
Yeah. Again, Seton Hall win, though. Seton Hall win really shakes things up. That would make it interesting. I think this should be a good game. It'll be a low-scoring defensive battle, but I think it should be a good one. And this is a test of if Seton Hall's defense can win them a game. It's got to be. You got to do this like at the Rutgers one. You got to muck it up, pull it down into the 40s.
Yeah,
it's gonna have to be one of those nights.
I mean, Creighton can touch 100 sometimes, 90s often, 80s a lot of the time. I don't remember the last time I saw Seton Hall in the 80s, and I don't know if they've touched 70s in recent memory. So
Seton Hall actually just scored 84 points 2 games ago at St. John's.
Great. So screw my point. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But it doesn't happen often, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's because you're playing St. John's and they play crazy up tempo, so you get those points. They have 2 games in the 80s in Big East play. Both of them are against St. John's.
Yeah.
Their other game in the 80s was against Lincoln, Pennsylvania, which is a D2 school. And they scored 82 against Wagner, 80 against St. Peter's. So no, they have not scored 80 against a regular opponent in a regular game.
Yeah, that's my point. I should have worded it that way. I think this is going to look a lot like their late January matchup against Marquette. I thought it was going to be close, but I mean, I love this Creighton team. So I'm going to go with them.
Crazier things have happened, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we'll take Creighton there. Rest of the Wednesday night slot, we have a CBS sports game, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're heading to Rhode Island. The Friars host Georgetown. First time they've met this season. Friars coming off a week-long break. I think the Friars are going to be expected to win this one. Is Georgetown able to upset that at all?
I don't think so, but I'm not at that level of, disrespect, I guess. It was disrespect that Georgetown was getting from a lot of people, including myself. Ken Palm has this as a 15-point win for Providence, and that makes sense.
Yeah. Here's a stat for you. I would assume Georgetown is going to be wearing like one of the road uniforms for this game. They're on the road. So they should be wearing either their navy blue uniform, their black uniform, or their turquoise uniform. Those are the 3 road uniforms they have. They have no wins in those uniforms this season.
Matt, the uniform tracker.
I've never seen that. I've seen teams struggle on the road, but that's a whole other level right there to not have a win at all in those at this point in the year. So, I'm taking the Friars here. The Friars have been so much better with Jared Bynum in the lineup. He's back. He's healthy for this one. I think they win and cover. And I think Georgetown's good, and I think Georgetown keeps it close for most of it, but the Friars will pull away at the end and probably win the last 10 minutes of this game pretty handily.
Yeah, Villanova's podcast, one of their biggest ones, is called The Full 40, and they recently rebranded, and it's called maybe The Full Maybe 35, just about. And, I mean, that applies to Villanova, but it also applies to Georgetown. They're really good in the first 35 minutes of the game, and then just not in the last 5. So, I could definitely see this being closer, a couple possession game later in the second half before Providence just completely pulls away.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page about this one. I will say, this is a Providence defense that has been inconsistent. Primo Spears as a slasher has some of the same qualities that Sule Boom had. He gave the Friars defense issues. So if Georgetown's able to pull this out, it's going to be because he's able to generate a lot of offense and the Friars just aren't hitting the shots the way they have been. The Georgetown defense did hold opponents to lower scores last week. They held Creighton to just 63 points. They held UConn to just 68. The defense coming around a little bit for the Hoyas. Probably not enough to get a win here, but something to think about.
Yeah.
And we got one more game on the schedule, the late night tip. It's DePaul heading to Finneran Pavilion, looking for a sweep of Villanova. Fox Sports 1, 8:30 Eastern. Does it happen, Tommy?
No, it doesn't. Is Villanova going to lose? Villanova's not going to lose. They're retiring Jalen Brunson's jersey. Jay Wright's being honored before the game. Villanova's bringing out the big dogs for this matchup against DePaul. No, but seriously, I think the best days of DePaul's basketball this season are behind them, and Villanova's are in front of them. We're going to get a little bit more clarity on the status of Jordan Longino tomorrow. If he plays, that would be great. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if he didn't, because I think Villanova would be able to handle it without him, get healthy for the biggest game of their season on Saturday at Seton Hall, or at home versus Seton Hall. But, yeah, I think Villanova's trending in the right direction, and I think they win and cover whatever the spread is.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Not that the first game was a fluke, but these teams have gone in very different directions since their first meeting. Villanova's gotten a lot better since then. They passed the eye test the way they didn't before, and they're at home. DePaul's not playing good basketball right now. I could see a world where DePaul wins it, but I think you just got to take Villanova here.
Wonder if we can get Jalen Brunson on Forging the Fin.
Ooh, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
I don't think we can
or
get
Jay Wright.
I was thinking Jay, but if a lot of food at the Finneran Pavilion. I mean, they got like tacos and hot dogs and wings and stuff. He's not going to want to get his fingers dirty. His suit dirty.
That's true. He's a man of class. We'll say Jay Wright was amazing on the Ohio State-Michigan broadcast on Sunday.
Amazing.
So good. We need to get him on some Big East games as soon as possible. And hey, but he's doing some March Madness, right? This was just Final Four.
I know he's doing Final Four, but I think he's doing some before that too.
Yeah, maybe he'll get some Big East games in that then. That would be very enjoyable.
Him and Tom McCarthy are such a good combo. I get the pleasure of listening to Tom McCarthy as a Phillies fan. He's their play-by-play guy. So I listened to him all summer, and to be honest, he's better at basketball than he is at baseball. He's pretty damn good at baseball. So, shout out Jay Wright, the GOAT.
Yeah, it was a great broadcast. So that was a good time. I think that's going to do it for our previews for this week. So that's obviously we go through Wednesday. We'll be back Thursday night to preview this weekend's action. But our last little segment here, we took some questions from you guys. Got a mailbag here, and we're gonna answer these. We got some good questions here. I'm just gonna start with this one for you, Tommy. Dynamic comparative advantage. asks, what's the likelihood that 6 Big East teams make the tournament? If you had to put a percentage on it, how are you feeling right now?
30%.
Yeah.
30%. I mean, the top 5 that are ranked right now, I think I'll make it, and pretty convincingly. I'm not as high on the Seton Hall team as maybe some other people are. I mean, they got some talent. I know we just had Matt Schumacher on here who said definitively, yeah, that they would make the tournament. I'm just, I don't know. I'm not sold on that team yet. I don't think that they can make that final push, steal one of these bigger wins, and it's going to be tough to get in that large bid.
Yeah, I'm in like the 20 to 25% range here just because I think they have to do something we haven't seen yet to get in. They need probably a pair of big wins here, and they need to. I think the thing that's going to be tough is they need to do that while also not dropping anything else. They're going to have to sweep Villanova, I'm pretty sure, to make this happen, to kind of prove that they're definitively one of the 6 best teams and they're not in some kind of a middle tier in the conference. And that looks so difficult right now. That said, if they beat Creighton on Wednesday, I'm bumping that number up because that's probably the toughest thing that they have left. I think they have a better chance at beating Creighton than they will at I'm trying to remember who else they have down the line. Oh, they play Xavier at home, I think, still. And that Xavier offense, I don't know if they can keep up. Creighton's a team I think they can keep up with. So this is a real chance for them. Win this, and then we'll talk. Then we start to get closer to the 50% range.
Yeah, and Matt made some really good points when he was on the pod. I mean, their resume is there already. They built up a lot of good. That Rutgers win is going to loom so large come Election Sunday. So, I mean, it's at 30% right now, but it could easily be bumped up with a really solid week this week and maybe another win sprinkled in. I think they're two big wins away from that number eclipsing 50%.
Yeah, and I think it's this week. This is the week we find out.
Yeah.
It's versus Creighton at Villanova. You go 2-0 this week, and I would like Seton Hall's odds of being that 6th team in.
Ask us again next week.
Yeah. I will follow that up. So we say 6 Big East teams. Let's say Seton Hall doesn't make it, at least as an at-large. From Seton Hall down in the standings, what do you think the odds are of one of those teams winning the Big East tournament and getting the extra bid that way?
I think the only team that could do that is Villanova, to be completely honest, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I tend to. I put that in the less than 5% of less than 5% chance of one of those teams doing it. Probably, I could see Villanova even getting to the championship, but they have to win some games that they have not shown they can win this year, and got to see it before I'm going to believe it there. So yeah, we'll see what happens. A lot can change. This is a big week for that question. So thank you for that one. Next question. This one comes from Kevin Mosher. If Xavier or Marquette wins out, what's the highest either one of them could be ranked?
The highest seed or the highest that they could be ranked in the AP poll?
I think let's answer both. Let's start with the AP poll.
The AP poll, I mean, I just think that the Purdue's and Houston's of the world are so good and so solidified in there that they'd really need a nosedive to barrel out of the top 5. The Virginia is in there too. So I think if they win out, the highest they can go is 3, but I'd probably be more comfortable in the 4 or 5 range.
Yeah, I'd say for Marquette, I think Marquette can get into the top 5 because there's Texas there, there's Arizona, there's Tennessee. Those teams have tough games left to play. I think the Purdue, Houston, Alabama at the top is going to be hard to get into at this point, hard to crack that. But I think Marquette can really zoom up the rankings behind them if they were to find a way to win out here. Xavier has the loss to DePaul that I think makes it more difficult for them. Now, if they win out, they will pick up some good wins in the process. So I'd say probably move each team 5 or 6 spots up from where they are now, and that's about where I'd say they'd get in the AP poll if they win out. Yeah. Now seed line, where do you see them there?
I think Marquette can get as high as a 2 seed. I really do, and I think Xavier's right in that. I mean, we're talking about the highest they can go. I'm not on the I'm not on the podcast saying Marquette's going to be a 2 seed or I expect them to be a 2 seed. I'm saying their ceiling is a 2 seed. And I think Xavier's right there with them at 2, 3, 4 maybe.
Yeah, on bracket matrix right now, Xavier is the last 3 seed. Marquette is the second 4 seed. 2 seed is totally attainable for each. I don't think either would have to win out to get a 2 seed either.
Agree.
They would have to almost win out and probably win the Big East tournament. But I think whoever wins the Big East here, I don't think Creighton has the resume for it. But Xavier and Marquette, if either wins the Big East and does so in dominant fashion, I think they can easily get a 2 seed. I think that's attainable. I think a 1 seed's probably out of reach.
Yep.
Yeah, they had some real weird stuff would have to happen for one of these teams to get a 1 seed, and that's part of that had to do with some of the rough matchups in the non-conference too. Not a great non-conference for the Big East for a variety of reasons, and this is where that hurts you. But nothing wrong with a 2 seed.
Nothing wrong with the 2 seed.
Especially not this year, where things are as wide open as they are. Follow-up question from Charlie Weber. Staying on Marquette here, he asks, chances Marquette can win one of their remaining Quad 1 road games. Let me pull up what the actual Quad 1 road games are here for Marquette down the stretch. It's just the 2 of them at UConn this week. So obviously you like their chances because you picked them in that game. Their other one is at Creighton. How do you feel about those?
I don't love the one at Creighton. I think if they're going to get the win, it's going to be at UConn.
I'd say they have probably like a 30-35% chance of winning one of these games. They're not going to be favored in either one. I will probably pick against them in both. But both should be close games. Both are totally winnable. And winning both of them wouldn't even shock me with how Marquette has played at points this season. I think everything is on the table. But if you're looking for a number, probably in the 30-35% range for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was going to say 30% as well.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that question, Charlie. We got a question from our own Michael DeRosa, and I think you're gonna like. I think you're gonna like this one. This is, in a way, a 2-parter. We're gonna have to get to the essence of what this question is.
Okay.
If every Big East team was a sandwich, who's the meatball sub? So the first part of this question is, how good is the meatball sub? Where are we ranking that?
Oh, I mean, I've never gone to a hoagie shop and ordered a meatball sub, to be honest with you. Now,
really,
I do enjoy on Sundays just throwing meatballs in a crock pot and getting a couple hoagie rolls, cutting them open, Parmesan cheese, whatever, and provolone. I do enjoy meatball subs, but I'm not going to go out of my way to get one. But I think if you want, I got my answer here. I got my answer, and I like my answer. When I think of a meatball sub, I'm thinking Sunday, like a bunch of beers in the cooler, watching football, baseball, whatever outside. And you get a meatball sub, you take a bite into it, the sauce just dripping down your cheeks, on your shirt. You wipe it off on your sleeve. It doesn't matter. It's going to get the job done. It's going to be messy, but it's going to get the job done. Give me Seton Hall for the meatball sub.
We are speaking the same language here, Tommy. I'm right there with you because I'm thinking meatball sub. It's savory, and it's not the prettiest meal, but it's gonna fill you up. You're gonna feel really good after you eat it. You're gonna be ready to fall asleep on the couch or in your chair, watching whatever you're watching when you eat it. And they're dependable. It's old school. You know it's gonna be there for you. It's not the prettiest. It's not gonna be what you eat out on a fancy dinner, but when you need that comfort food, it's there, and that's got to be Seton Hall this year, I think.
It's the most Seton Hall sandwich I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's got to be up there. So yeah, I like that question. We got one final one from Big East Barroom. Love the Big East Barroom. Yeah, who's your Big East? Yeah, who's your Big East most improved player?
I think I went with Zach Fremantle. The last time we talked about this, I think
that was like comeback player.
That's true. That's true.
I have my answer for this. I think it's Joel Soriano.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Who else would be in this conversation?
Oh, this is such a good question.
Yeah. And there's a lot of players that have improved a lot this season. I think you could basically look at anybody on Marquette and point a finger there and feel good about the answer. All 5 starters.
For as good as he was last year, the steps he's taken this year, especially on defense, Andre Jackson. I think he's turned I think he's really taken, because I don't think there's a single star on UConn. There's not the
Mm-hmm.
star of the show. I think Andre Jackson's kind of turning himself into that. He's always been athletic,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, he's working on his three this year. It's not money yet, but he's working on it, and he's really cranked up that defense and him being a leader. I like Andre Jackson.
Yeah. If we're looking at guys who transferred into the conference too, I'd look at both Devin Carter and Bryce Hopkins as candidates for this, especially Bryce Hopkins. Barely played last year, and he's in the Big East Player of the Year conversation at this point. I don't know if he would be eligible for this if we're saying Big East Most Improved because he wasn't in the Big East last year, but he's been something. But if we're going big picture, it has to be Joel Soriano. I don't think he's answer number one. The rest of these are who else is in that conversation. I'm sure we missed somebody. So if anybody else out there has some other answers, send them our way. And
I'm sure they do.
would love to hear those. That's, I think, going to do it for us on tonight's show. Make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe there where you can get some video podcasts. I think March is coming up here, and I think we're going to have some fun stuff planned along the way that you are not going to want to miss. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Get the video version of the podcast. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever it is you get your podcasts. Make sure we're always in your feed. So any episodes we put out, it's going to be right there. You don't have to look for it. It'll just be there. You can click on it. You can listen to us, hear about the Big East. And yeah, we're going to be back doing a live show Thursday night, reacting to what happens this week. See how many of our picks we got right, see how many we got wrong, and preview this weekend's action. That is my co-host, Tommy Godin. I am Matt St. Jean, and we'll be seeing you later this week. Thanks for listening.